So in Silicon Valley, you hear the term disruption a lot. You oftentimes hear this term associated with transportation, financial services industries, healthcare. You don't oftentimes, or as often, hear about it in terms of institutions and leagues. But that's what our two speakers here are doing today. Mike Rabel and David West are disrupting their respective leagues in terms of introducing new ones and in new and innovative ways. So thank you both for joining.
Of course.
Mike, I'm going to start with you. We met a couple years ago, and we were always talking about what's next. Well, what's next is here, and you can talk about it. So for those that don't know, tell us a little bit about the Premier Lacrosse League and how it started.
Sure, yeah. So we're a brand new professional lacrosse league. We're the first ever tour-based model. It's purely a single entity, so we own all 6 of our teams. And we travel to 14 different markets throughout the year, and all 6 of our teams play one game on that weekend, right? And the thought behind that was an emerging sport like lacrosse, we need to get distribution. And so we are lucky to have all the best players in the world. And I'm a co-founder with my brother Paul, who's actually spoken, I think, at the last 2 conferences, or maybe at least at the last conference. And he's been heralded as one of the best players ever play. And we'll talk a little bit about our platform and why players found it attractive. But the whole idea is to bring the best players in the world to markets domestically and in Canada that have never seen those players actually play field lacrosse before, build our brand, build the awareness, get the market conditioned to go into professional lacrosse games. And then as we build that brand, as we build our product market fit in a bigger and better way, we can then go into a franchise model.
Yeah, yeah. And you have a saying called "We the Players."
Yep.
What does that mean?
We're in the shirt right now. So, Paul, as a player, that's why he's not here. That's why I'm filling in for him. I believe me, you'd rather talk to my brother, see my brother speak. He's far better looking and more eloquent. We built this with in mind to get the best players in the world and get them to leave the incumbent that was around for 19 years. We had to make it an attractive proposition, but we also had to build for the long run with them. And so traditionally with the incumbent, the MLL, player wages were stagnant at $8,000 per year. We've raised those wages by 5 times. We're also offering health care to all players, and we're giving them stock options in the league. And there are actually investors who passed on it, who are owners in other professional organizations and teams, because they didn't want to have that same approach of, our players on my, team in respective league. They may see that I'm invested in a league that's giving stock options to the players, and they may want stock options in my entity. And that was okay. But we felt like it was necessary to all sort of row in the same direction. We have 5 values at the PLL. One of them is operate like an owner. And we can say that to every single one of our players and employees. Hey, in that situation, in that post, or being late for this meeting, or being late for this practice, did you operate like an owner? Well, in our case, because we're providing stock options, they're actually owners. And so that's a super valuable tool for us to be able to use and then incentivize them for taking the risk of building this league with us.
Yeah. And you talked about investors, which I want to sort of open up in a bit. But sort of David, turning to you, there recently was a big announcement about you joining the Historical Basketball League. So both, similarly for those that aren't familiar, what is the league, and also, how did the opportunity for you to join kind of come about?
Okay, so the Historical Basketball League is a basketball league. We're aiming to become the premier destination for the top college basketball players in the U.S. and internationally. Right now, the system that's in place is an exploitive system. They take advantage of the athletes. They don't compensate the athletes. Any player in here that's been in college has been exploited. I'm a victim of exploitation. So we're seeking to change that dynamic. I got introduced to the HBL of the concept about 3 years ago through a teammate and his brother who was very active against the NCAA and outspoken against the NCAA. He told me, hey, David, there's something coming in a couple years. I want you to be a part of it. Last year, I started having some conversations with the guys again just to see where some progress was. These guys have built, in my opinion, the most formidable challenge the NCAA has seen. Just in terms of our model and our layout, we're going to challenge them to do the right thing. And people have tried to legislate against them, and they keep fighting it. People have tried to legally fight them in court, and they spend millions and billions of dollars winning legal cases, but nobody's ever challenged them in the market, so we intend to do so.
Yeah. As a former, you touched on this a little bit, but as a former professional athlete yourself, how have you used that? Sounds like it's motivating you, frankly, but how have you used that to sort of help build the league that you're building? Yeah,
it's just all confidence, extreme courage, no fear, just going after it. It's going to be a fight. I'm up for it. That's the nature of our group. It's the nature of the business we know we've walked into. But when you're talking about a business that's upward of $3+ billion a year with no competitor, we feel like there's a place for someone to step in there and give them a fight. We feel like our model, we've separated academics and athletics. So athletically, we're going to play basketball in the summer. Academically, in the fall and winter, we're going to enroll our athletes into a plethora of educational opportunities. We're not going to restrict them to solely traditional four-year universities. We're going to use the immense network of technical and community colleges, junior colleges, vocational universities, media training universities, all of the opportunities for education we're going to use to supplement sort of what they're going through now. We feel like giving them an education that they can use tangibly in the profession that they're choosing to go to, which most guys choose at a very early age to pursue sports and basketball. So we're going to create the opportunity for them.
Yeah. Well, and so, we've heard throughout the day, kind of the idea of like concepts and ideas are, plentiful, but actually getting something out there and getting it in market, launching is tough. So I want to come back to you in a moment, but Mike, you just went through that. The season just started and you were in build mode for however long. First of all, tell us about that path to saying, okay, hey, we're going to pick a date and we're going to have that first game.
Yeah.
And actually doing it.
Right. No, it's as David said, and I was talking to him, I guess backstage is what you call it. And I was just like, building a league is a large order, tall task. And just like David said, it's a fight, man. And that was the first thing I said to him. I was like, man, you're in it, huh? And he was like, I'm in it. But that type of attitude that he has, that sort of relentless North Star focus, is what gets you to that place, and you have to be like very measured and sort of time driven around that date, that launch date. It's very different than other businesses, and it can be stressful at times, right? Our launch date was June 1st. We're in week 5 right now. All of our teams are in Atlanta. The reason why my brother's not here is because he's playing. His team, Atlas Lacrosse Club, is in Atlanta, playing tomorrow night against the Archers Lacrosse Club. And unlike a B2B software business or even a consumer software business, you can have like a product roadmap, and then things get adjusted based on a partner's needs, and your roadmap changes, and your launch date may change, or you do like a soft launch and you see how the product performs and if there's product market fit. In our business, it was June 1st. You're going live on NBC, and all the players and fans, and hopefully there's a bunch of fans, they're going to be there and they're going to watch. And so the countdown meetings and our Monday morning meetings with our team moved from, I'd say, about inside of 90 days to almost like a rallying call. And it was like, we got 62 days. And then this is the things that need to happen. And here are all the meetings and the process and our teams. And here's the operating plan we're executing against. But it was far different than anything we've ever done, because you have to be ready to deliver at that date. And so it was a lot of sort of in the face of adversity when the incumbent was coming after us. When there's budget constraints or things outside your budget you didn't foresee, sort of rolling with the punches, a lot of box breathing, a lot of sort of mindfulness to handle all those sort of blows that you didn't see around the corner. So it was a task, but my brother's super resilient, and David actually reminds me of him, and just sort of that's an athlete mindset. Is that when you've been the best at what you've done in your field, you just had to excel. And so if it wasn't for Paul, and just sort of his relentlessness pursuit of that goal, I don't know if we would have been able to make it.
Yeah. So, quick follow-up question: 5 weeks in, what's been sort of kind of the biggest surprise? Like, what did you think? Where did you think you'd be at 5 weeks? That you're either way ahead of, way behind? Like, what's sort of your feeling?
Biggest surprise, man. I think the biggest surprise is how. I guess it wasn't really a surprise. We're hitting all of our metrics, actually, and that feels great. At the same time, I think getting, the competition for fan attendance is sort of multi-layered, right? There's people vacation in the summer. I was kind of like with the tour-based model, I was like, well, if we go to a city once, everyone in that market will put their vacation aside and come watch the best lacrosse players in the world. That's not the case. you have to really build something attractive and hit them 7 times. So our metric that we've learned is you need to get in the face of a consumer 7 times to get them to buy. And ticket is what they're buying, right? Additionally, we're also competing with club organizations, Club Lacrosse, right? They host these big tournaments in the summer. And all of our, part of our market right now is going and playing on Saturdays and Sundays when we're playing our games. And so we just had a sellout night last Saturday night in Baltimore. And it was the first partnership we ever launched with a club organization. And we offered $5 tickets to the organization. And we said, anyone who goes to the Crab Feast, which for 5,000 people, you guys get a $5 ticket, right? And it's super low pricing, but that worked. And we got butts and seats. Our per cap numbers were crazy from that event. Concessions were nuts. And so a lot of it's similar to other sort of tech models where it's like roll out a freemium piece or like a very low cost product, and then you can upsell along the way, get them involved, get them to see the product, get them to see why lacrosse is so special, why we've changed the game, get them to engage with our players, and they'll slowly start to evolve into lacrosse fans.
Yeah, and David, you're gearing up. So 2020, sort of the current launch date. What needs to happen between now and then for Tip Off to be a success for you all?
Yeah, so for us, we're targeting a video game partner and an apparel partner. That's really the big next step for us. We've had some pretty good conversations. Again, in sports particularly, and the NCAA is entrenched, and a lot of the bigger brands are entrenched with them. But it's not stopping them from talking to us, ironically. So we're, in that regard, that's where we are in terms of next steps. And then also a digital partner. We've had some early conversations with some of the big boys. We're being contacted now. The NCAA is helping us actually because they continue to show the world how horrible they are. Every single day or every single week. So we continue to take advantage of it.
I'll tell you one thing, not that you need any advice, and I want advice from you, but on the apparel piece, I spent like 18 months trying to get a jersey and footwear sponsor. And the best thing, and you know this already, but the best thing that you can do is create leverage, just like kind of in any partner.
Right.
We were very fortunate to get Adidas as our footwear and jersey sponsor, but they probably wouldn't have done a deal if Under Armour kind of wasn't like also pushing for that.
Right.
And so there's a bit of gamesmanship, and you know this far better than me, but that's often like the best thing to do. And I learned it's kind of like this weird like snake oily salesman thing where maybe one party's not really kind of there, but you tell the other party that they are there and create a marketplace. So.
All right. So I want to shift gears a little bit here. Listen, the mission, the vision, I think what you both are building is amazing. But putting sort of the players and the sport aside for a moment, this is a business, and you both raise money. You're both going to need to raise more. You have business models behind it. We're in Silicon Valley. You have a bunch of investors. Like, why does it make economic sense? Like, this is a capital-intensive business in a lot of ways. So, sort of how do you think about the business model of what you all are building?
Well, I'll start. Well, for us, it's very simple. So the incumbent went to court for 10 years to make sure that they didn't have to share the profits of a video game, which has to do with the players' individual license and the group licensing. So for us, it's a layup. We go create a video game. We go create and find the right video game partner, which, if you think about the numbers in 2004, was about $1.1 billion for the NCAA video game. So you can imagine where it is now. It's an economic opportunity in our eyes. Also, like we said, right now, currently, the NCAA is pocketing about $3 billion plus with no competitor in sight. And we feel like, particularly in a free market, they need competition. So from an economic standpoint, we feel like it's a model that can work. We've separated basketball, so we feel like our performance will be at a different level than what college currently is, because we're going to remove the pressure of having to academically perform during the same time you have to physically perform, which is a task in and of itself for college athletes. So we're going to remove that burden, allow agents to work with our players, allow companies to work with our players directly. So there's a huge economic opportunity there for not only the players, but for businesses as well.
Yeah.
It's awesome. I'm jealous. Just, you get to build a basketball league. Basketball's the best sport, I think. I mean, there's no other sport that has, 80% of the game is highlights.
Right.
Right. Obviously, all the things you're doing on top of it are just incredible. And I was a NCAA athlete, but I know what it's like to be in a video game and not get paid. So all the things that you're doing are incredible. But I think to that point, the best thing and why this is a business model is because it's sports. And you heard a lot of investors up here talking about product market fit. I mean, I think basketball has the best product market fit out of any sport. But lacrosse, there's already a product market fit. It's the oldest indigenous sport in North America, started by Native Americans over 1,000 years ago. Now it has some stink on it as being a Northeast preparatory sport that we're washing away and we're changing and we're showcasing why it's not the case. But the best part about sports is as soon as you launch, there's a market for it, right? You don't have to do all this testing. And then if you're launching a league, just like David's saying, there's all these revenue opportunities, right? And it is capital intensive to your point, but like there's ticket sales, there's merchandise, there's sponsorship sales, there's media rights, there's branded content, there's concessions, there's so many opportunities. And then there's like if you start to really build a platform like what UFC has done, there's recurring revenue models for your content. Right. And that's why there's so much enterprise value. And if you find the right investors who have that sort of long view and then believe in what you're building, it can be very, very profitable for them in the long run.
Yeah. Just again, we're going to open up to a question or two in a minute here if you want to start thinking. But before we do that, so you talked about sports being this, but like why is each one of your sports going to be different? Like why do you tune in? Like what is the reason you want this audience to walk away with to say this is why you need to tune in on Saturday or when you tip off in 2020?
Yeah. So I mean, lacrosse. To us, I mean, we're changing what people think about lacrosse. And so I think we've changed the rules, but we've also changed the storytelling behind it. And so we've shortened the field, we've shortened the shot clock, we've sped up the game. And what we've done the reason we've done that, we've shortened the actual length of the quarters. The reason we've done that is we looked at case studies around sort of where the most fan engagement is, and it's around high scoring products or like high movement engaging sports like hockey or the NFL. And the two most engaged with games were the most engaged with game in the NFL last year was the Chiefs-Rams game because of all the points they scored, right? And so we thought about that, and lacrosse is already a fast sport. It borrows techniques from soccer and basketball, and the physicality of football and the team sport nature of it is super interesting. But then we sped it up. And so it's just, if you watch our games, it's nonstop. Additionally, our broadcast with NBC, who we're super fortunate to be in partnership with, there was actually a game tomorrow night at 8 o'clock on NBC Sports Network. We're actually going underneath the helmet. In a helmet sport, unlike basketball, which again I think is the best sport, you deal with a helmet and you can't see their face. You can't feel their emotion as a consumer. And so what we've done is we built technology into the helmets that allows the booth and the broadcast to call into a player after they've actually scored a goal. And so what you'll see is at least once a quarter, our broadcast booth and commentators talking to our players either after they've scored or after goalies let in a goal. And to us, that brings the fan onto the field, and that's what we want to do. And so that's, I think, why people should watch the PLL.
And for us, we're going to be innovative. We're not going to, try to follow the traditional model. So right off the gate, we're going to play with NBA rules. 24-second shot clock. We're going to try to bring in, NBA-specific trainers. So the way our season is set up, our season will start, games will start in end of May, go through September. What happens in the NBA is, and these guys will tell you, all of the NBA trainers are unemployed. They're not allowed to work with the players anymore. So we want to transition the NBA trainers to start working with our players in our off-season, which becomes the on-season for the NBA players. With us, we're going to have fan opportunities in October, November, February, and March for fans to select teams. During those exhibitions, there will be sports gambling. So for us, we are going to make friends with all of the people who the NCAA has made an enemy. So we're going to be friendly to agents. We're going to be friendly to the sports bettors. We're going to be friendly to the shoe companies, the brands, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. A couple minutes. Any questions here? Nope. There we go.
For Mike, your guys' branding and content so far has been awesome. It seems like you just absolutely squashed the MLL and the kind of laziness and kind of what was going on with their league. Can you talk through the mindset leading up to the season of how you want to be different on the branding, content, marketing, et cetera side?
Yeah, that's a great question. I appreciate that compliment. we built actually our most resourced team at our company is our media team, and it's broken into two sectors. It's broken into programmers and producers, and so we have our programmers who focus on actually our social content, and they have our producers who are actually building it, and then they have treatments through our coordinating producer and our creative based on the stories of the games and the stories we want to tell off the field and outside the lines that we push through, we create, and then we build and push through our programmers. And it's something, we have a 15-person media team, and we think that content that we're building, our mic'd up sessions that we had when I was just sending it over to Endeavor this morning, and I said, in the last hour we've increased our interaction rate to 15%, and this content's 3 days old, right? And 120,000 views on this one piece, this 39-second clip. I mean, I think impressions are great with our content, but what we really go for is interaction. How do you hold that attention? And it's through having great creative. It's having getting there and using good technology to bring the field to life, and then having great producers and editors to build that and push it out. And for us, hiring was just so important. And there's a lot of talk about sort of how do you get a competitive advantage. And Paul built his own media company before, and his eye and then sort of my background in sort of building businesses, we're able to be really rigorous about the type of people we hired. And we're already the hard part is we're 8 months into building and sort of officially launching, and our media team's already getting calls from some other leagues being like, hey, so some of our predators are coming to us and be like, hey, I just got this offer from X team. We're like, but I appreciate that, and that's kind of how we think about it.
Yeah, and then one more question here.
I got a question for David West. In terms of all your competitors, I would say the Australian Basketball League that they have now, a lot of kids are going to out of high school. You have a few other overseas places in the G League, changing rules. I think they're all feeling that threat that you possibly can have. How do you convince a kid that this is the right path to go down?
Yeah, so the last couple weeks, right, so there's been 3 or 4 high major talents, kids that were completely eligible to go into the college system that chose to go to either Australia or New Zealand. The thing about that is they're not, obviously the 2 largest markets for basketball are here in China, but this is still the golden standard for basketball. So the opportunity for us is to create a league that those kids would want to stay and not take that 5,000 or 6,000 mile journey. In terms of competitors, the G League is always, if you're at 18, you've always been able to go into the G League. Nobody wants to go into the NBA through the back door. Part of the pride is getting drafted, right? It's being called by the team, and so nobody wants to go into the NBA through the back door. So we don't really look at the G League as a competitor because I just don't think that their model is attractive to 18, 19, and 20-year-olds. We've had to convince the NBA that we're not a competitor to them. That's been the one. The NCAA, we know, they know who we are, we know who they are. But the NBA has been the one that we've had to convince that we're not trying to encroach or change, sort of what they do. We know that the way that we've constructed our system, it's more beneficial to the player to be in our environment. That's going to be a high level in terms of physical development, but also mental development. We want to give them practical and tangible education that they can use as they continue their professional journeys.
Well, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Best of luck, and appreciate the conversation.
Absolutely.